Two people wake up at the same time tomorrow morning. One goes to work to make money. The other wakes up and their money is already working, without them. By the time the first person clocks in, the second has already earned while sleeping. That gap did not happen by accident, and it did not require a miracle. The average American retires with enough money to last exactly 18 months. Not 10 years, not 20 years, 18 months, after a lifetime of working. That number comes from the World Bank, and almost nobody talks about it. But here is the thing. The problem is not how hard you are working. The problem is what your money is doing while you sleep. Because the people who are quietly building real wealth are not working more than you. They have simply figured out how to make their money work instead. Today I am breaking down the exact numbers, the exact shifts, and the exact mindset that separates the people who work for money their entire lives from the people who eventually make money work for them. Let us start with the number everyone knows. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median household income in America sits at approximately $74,580 per year. That is the number people compare themselves to. That is the number cited in every conversation about whether someone is doing well or not. But that number is misleading the moment you look at it closely. Because the average, pulled upward by extreme earners at the very top, sits closer to $105,000. That gap between median and average is not a small statistical detail. It is the difference between what most Americans actually experience and what the headline number suggests. Which means if your household brings in $74,000 a year, you are not behind. You are exactly at the middle. And the middle is not where failure lives. The middle is where the decision gets made. The real gap is not between your income and someone else's. The real gap is between what your money is doing right now and what it is capable of doing. And most people never close that gap. Not because they cannot, but because nobody ever showed them clearly where it was. Now let us talk about the first threshold. To enter the top 10% of income earners in the United States, EAR's data shows you need an individual income of approximately $130,000 per year. For a household, that number rises to around $167,000. Think about who actually lives at this level. A mid-level engineer at a tech company, a nurse practitioner in a mid-sized city, a small business owner with a stable client base, a dual-income household where both partners work in education or healthcare. These are not people living extravagantly. Most of them are carrying mortgages, paying off student loans, funding college savings accounts for their kids, and quietly wondering why it still does not feel like enough at the end of every month. That is the paradox of this threshold. The people who reach it feel completely ordinary. They feel like they are just keeping up, because they are comparing themselves upward, always upward, to the people above them, rather than seeing where they actually stand in the full picture. But here is the question this number cannot answer. Does earning $130,000 a year actually make you wealthy? Because wealthy and high income are not the same thing, and that difference is everything. Here is the next layer. The top 5% in the United States begins at an individual income of approximately $220,000 per year, according to EAR's Statistics of Income data. At this level, the profiles become more specific. Physicians and surgeons, senior software engineers at major tech firms, partners at law firms and accounting practices. And here is the detail that surprises most people. A 2023 survey by Salary Finance found that 1 in 3 Americans earning over $200,000 per year still live paycheck to paycheck. Not because they are irresponsible. Because lifestyle expansion moves in perfect lockstep with income growth at every single level. The bigger house, the private schools, the cars that match the neighborhood, the vacations that match the social circle. Income rises and spending rises to meet it, sometimes faster. Which means earning more without changing how that income is deployed does not automatically produce wealth. It produces a more expensive version of the same financial anxiety. That partially closes the question from before. But it opens a deeper one. If income is not the real measure of wealth, then what actually is? The top 1% in America, according to the Economic Policy Institute, entry into the top 1% of earners requires an annual income of approximately $820,000. That number feels large. But consider what the data consistently shows beneath it. The Federal Reserve's survey of consumer finances found that even among high earners, liquid investable assets remain surprisingly low relative to income. People at this level are often still entirely dependent on their next paycheck to maintain their lifestyle. The income threshold for the top 1% has also shifted upward by over 30% in the past 5 years alone, meaning the target keeps moving regardless of how fast you run toward it. And even here, at the very top of the income picture, the full story has not been told, because income is only one half of the equation. And it is the less important half. Now here is where it gets really interesting. Everything so far, the brackets, the thresholds, the comparisons, that is the side of the picture everyone can see. The side that gets discussed at dinner tables and measured at reunions and quietly calculated at family gatherings. But the side that actually determines whether someone ends up financially free or financially stuck regardless of income level is something most people never fully examine. It is not what you earn. It is what you own. It is what your money is doing at 2 a.m. when you are asleep and your alarm has not gone off yet. It is the second person from the opening of this video. And most Americans, including many who earn well, have never been clearly shown how that second person actually got there. So stay here, because this next part is the part that changes how you see every financial decision you will make for the rest of your life. Let us talk about net worth. The Federal Reserve's survey of consumer finances puts the median American household net worth at approximately $192,700. That number sounds reasonable on the surface. Until you pull it apart, because the vast majority of that figure, for most households, is locked inside a single illiquid asset: the home, which cannot be spent, cannot be invested, cannot generate monthly income without being sold or borrowed against. Strip the primary residence out of the average American's net worth, and the investable liquid wealth that remains is, for most households, surprisingly thin. When you break net worth down by age, the progression tells the real story. Americans in their 20s carry a median net worth close to zero, often negative when student debt is factored in. Those in their 40s begin to build, primarily through home equity. Those in their 60s who made consistent investment decisions starting in their 30s arrive at retirement in a fundamentally different position from those who did not. A retired teacher who contributed consistently to their 403(b) from age 28 and never touched it will retire with more usable financial freedom than a 38-year-old earning $180,000 per year who kept their brokerage account empty and upgraded everything else. Same country, same opportunities, completely different outcome. Because wealth is not built in salary spikes, it is built in decades of quiet, consistent, boring decisions that nobody posts about and nobody applauds. All the way out. Because here is the perspective that almost no American financial conversation ever includes. According to Credit Suisse's Global Wealth Report, the median wealth per adult worldwide sits at approximately $8,654. To be in the top 10% of all wealth holders on the planet, not in your city, not in your state, on the entire earth, you need a net worth of approximately $100,000. And to reach the global top 1%, the threshold is approximately $1 million in net worth. Now here is the number that reframes everything. Roughly 55% of the world's adult population has a total net worth under $10,000. More than half of all adults on Earth. Which means an American with a modest retirement account, a paid-off car, and a small amount of home equity is already wealthier than the vast majority of people alive today. That is not a reason to stop building. That is a reason to stop telling yourself the story that you are starting from nothing. You are not starting from nothing. You are starting from further ahead than most of the world will ever reach. And you have access to investment tools that the majority of people on this planet will never be offered. And yet, it does not feel that way. That gap between what the data says and what your gut says every time you check your account is real. And it has a name. Psychologists call it reference group bias. You do not compare yourself to the global median. You compare yourself to your neighbor who just pulled a new SUV into their driveway. Your coworker who mentioned they are buying a vacation property. Your college roommate whose life looks a certain way on the screen you check before you go to sleep. Every one of those comparisons collapses your reference group down to a tiny, carefully curated, upwardly skewed sample of the world. And your brain processes that sample as normal, as the baseline, as what ordinary, successful life is supposed to look like. So when you are not keeping pace with that group, your nervous system registers it as falling behind, regardless of what the broader data actually says. Add to that what economists call lifestyle inflation. Every raise gets absorbed. Every promotion funds a slightly larger version of the same life. The apartment that felt like an upgrade at 24 feels like a compromise at 31. The car that felt like a reward last year feels unremarkable today. This is not a character flaw. This is how human beings are wired. But it is also the invisible mechanism that guarantees more income without a deliberate change in how that income is deployed will never produce the feeling of financial security. Because the goalpost is attached to you. It moves every time you do. Here is the truth that sits underneath all of it. The people who eventually stop working for money and start making money work for them are not smarter than you. They did not inherit a head start. They did not stumble onto a secret unavailable to everyone else. What they did was make one shift, one quiet, undramatic shift, earlier than the people around them. They decided that a fixed portion of every dollar they earned was not available to spend. It was automatic, non-negotiable. It belonged to the future version of them, and they put it to work. Consistently. Without requiring motivation or a perfect moment. A person who invests $500 per month starting at age 25, earning an average annual return of 10% through a broad index fund mirroring the historical S&P 500 average, will have accumulated approximately $2.7 million by age 65. The same person who waits until 35 to begin investing the same amount at the same return will arrive at 65 with approximately $1 million. Same $500 per month. Same return. 10 years of difference. $1.7 million of difference. That is not an inspiring story. That is compound interest, doing exactly what it always does when given enough time. And it does not care about your intentions. It only responds to when you started. There is a pattern of thinking that keeps people permanently locked into working for money regardless of how much they earn. It is the belief that investing is something you do once you have enough, once the credit cards are paid, once the student loans are handled, once the emergency fund is complete, once things feel more stable, But stability is not a destination that arrives and stays. The people who wait for the right conditions to start are describing those same conditions at 58. Because the right moment is not something that happens to you. It is something you decide. Imperfect, uncomfortable, with less than you wish you had. But now, not because starting small feels significant, because starting small and staying consistent is the only version of this that actually works across a real human lifetime. Money does not multiply because you planned to invest it. It multiplies because you did. The plan without the action is just a story you tell yourself. Where to begin does not need to be complicated. 3 things worth understanding clearly. First, your employer-sponsored 401k, especially if your employer offers any matching contribution. A matched 401k is the closest thing to a guaranteed immediate return that exists in personal finance. Not contributing enough to capture the full match is leaving part of your compensation on the table every single pay period. Second, a broad market index fund tracking the S&P 500, held inside a Roth IRA or a standard brokerage account. Low fees. Long history. No stock picking required. No expertise needed to begin. Third, automate the contribution so the decision is made once and permanently removed from your monthly willpower budget. These are not exotic strategies. They are the foundation that genuinely wealthy Americans, not the highest earners, the genuinely wealthy, built everything else on top of. The complexity can come later if you want it. The foundation is what most people never actually lay. So here is where everything lands. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are not earning too little to begin. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not an income problem. It is a deployment problem. Some portion of the money moving through your life right now, however small it feels, is capable of starting the process that changes the long-term picture entirely. Not next year. Not after the next raise. Not when things feel more settled. Now. The one thing to take from this, not a list, just one thing, is this. Open the account. Set the automatic transfer. Pick an amount that feels slightly uncomfortable, but survivable. And do not touch it. Because the version of you that exists in 20 years will be built almost entirely from decisions the current version of you makes in the next 30 days. And I want to leave you with one question, not to answer right now, just to carry with you. The second person from the beginning of this video, the one whose money was already moving while they slept, they started somewhere. They started with something small. They started when it was not the perfect time. What exactly are you waiting for?